Hello, welcome back to theCUBE here in Palo Alto. I'm John Furrier, the host of theCUBE in our Palo Alto studios. Andy MacMillan is here. He's the CEO of Alteryx, kind of making his public debut on theCUBE. Was on John Ford and CNBC earlier, new to the company. Thanks for coming on theCUBE. Appreciate you coming in.
I really appreciate it. It's fun to be here.
So Alteryx has been around. We've been covering it for a long time. Obviously the big data movement, kind of an OG in data. Obviously the market's changed. You're now at the helm. You just recently took over as CEO of the company. Market's in a good position, kind of, spins to your doorstep these days. You guys are in really good pole position. First of all, how long have you been at Alteryx? When did you start? What's the plan? What attracted you to Alteryx?
Sure, yeah, I started in early December, so very new in the role, as they say, but it's been a fast ramp up.
Yeah.
I've known the company for a while, know the space. I used to run the data.com business at Salesforce a while ago, so definitely not new to the data game. What got me excited about the company is, I think you're exactly right. The tailwind right now is all around AI. Everybody talks about AI. I think the next few years is about getting prepared for AI and how people are really going to take advantage of this, whether it's an agentic workforce or a large language model. The thing everybody's talking about is how do you get your data ready?
Yeah.
I think we have the best product in the world for doing that, so it was an exciting kind of opportunity to jump into.
It's interesting, as we've been saying on theCUBE, there's kind of going to be, history will be written, I think, in this moment. We're at a critical junction of kind of the nexus of many things coming at cloud scale, next level. You start to see platforms become big. There's still tooling out there for certain use cases, but with machine learning and generative AI specifically now kind of peaking at the beginning of, I call it inning one of the game, you're either going to be on the wrong side of history of this or the right side, and both on the company side, but also your customers, right? So the ones who have data are doing well. Some who have been doing data differently may or may not be doing well. So there's kind of like platform refactoring, new architectures are emerging, a new kind of data layer is emerging, while an existing market like analytics has been around. So the business analyst, the democratization of data has been thriving with lake houses and data lakes, but now you got to go horizontal with scale. You got specialism with machine learning and generative AI in the data specifically. So it's causing customers to really scratch their heads and say, okay, what is the scalable architecture for this? What is your view on that?
I think you're right, and I think the thing that is shifting a lot is the entire organizing principle for how people put their data together. Used to be very siloed by department, kind of line of business centric, and was very siloed by the business applications you pick. So if you go into any large company and you ask them, how's your data organized? They'll first tell you about the applications they have, and then those applications dictate the way their data is structured. And I think the big shift is the promise of AI is to be more effective and efficient across those layers, across those teams. Nobody wants to talk to an AI agent that sounds like you're talking to that live agent that keeps pointing you to a new department. And so we're going to change how we solve problems. And I think one of the things we're going to have to do is completely change the way we think about how we manage and store and organize all of this data. And that's going to be a big lift. And so how do we help people get empowered to do that? And a lot of what we talk about is, who are we empowering?
Yeah.
It's not just going to be your data science team. Yeah. It's going to have to be business analysts, people in operational roles, people that understand how your business operates. They're going to have to go in on a mandate to say, I'm going to reorganize this stuff to have it make sense.
Andy, you're in the Valley here, obviously got a great company with Alteryx. There's two types of companies we're seeing out there, and I want to get your perspective on this. There's we need to pivot, which means stop what you're doing and turn and change directions. And then folks who just change the trajectory of what they're on. It's not really a pivot, it's more of okay, maybe a zig or a zag, but we're in a market where you have to make these moves. Alteryx, you're new at the helm there, obviously a lot of investment behind the company. You're in a much different place as a company than you were a few years ago or even last year. What's different about Alteryx? Take us through the scope of the trajectory, the plan. Obviously, you're going into this kind of perfect storm of innovation.
Right.
Value extraction is going to be there, but there's a new way of doing things. What's the analyst kind of perspective view of if you had to share your thoughts on Alteryx's kind of position and kind of where you're going? Where's your North Star?
Yeah, I think inside the company, this is one of those moments where every leader should rethink essentially everything they're doing. There is no function where I have not had a chance to sit down and open up a ChatGPT or a Gemini or an Agentforce and think about how would this change the way that your team, how it runs, how it solves problems, how it scales. And so one, I do think it's a pivot moment. And some pivots are small departmental ones and some are company-wide. But everybody should be looking at that. And so that's inside the company. I think outside the company, my feeling is there are companies that are going to build the AI future. there are also a lot of companies that are going to be sort of the picks and shovels to help everybody get there.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if the world is going to move to an agentic workforce or a large language model workforce or some combination of those. I'm certain that to do either of those, people are going to have to get a lot more of their data prepared. And so we talk about AI in 3 layers at our company right now. There's the way you interface our product. Everybody's creating an AI interface to their product, so we are too. How you get output from the product, so it's fun to get AI reports and things like that, which is all great. But the third one that's, I think, unique to us is how the product is actually used to help companies get ready for AI. And so we're going to transform the company internally with it, but we're also going to go to every one of our customers, every one of our prospects and say, here's how we're going to help you sort of get prepared, whether you're heading down an agentic model or a large language world or whatever you're doing. You're going to have a different view of your data.
It's interesting, this old expression, I'll never forget this, don't pull the nets when the fish are running. You know, the fish want data, you guys have been doing it at Alteryx, but they're also doing things differently. You mentioned some of the transformational things. Business transformation is the hottest topic, and it's interesting, you know, we're going to get into this, the business analyst role, which I think is super important you guys talk about. The old dashboard days, you had a great democratization, hey, things are happening, and then you make a recommendation. Now there's more action involved. You're going to actually take the data, analyze it, and affect change, whether it's automation, workflow, which will reduce a lot of that heavy lifting. So people are looking at specific use cases that are low-hanging fruit. Now, agentic, you know, we've been reporting it's coming, but the AI infrastructure is really where the action is. Where's it happening with the data? Where's it stored? What's your view on that? Because I think the fish are running still. You guys have the net out there with the data analytics.
Right.
The data analysts are still doing their job, but now they can, at the point of value, they could actually implement directly. They don't have to like escalate it or make a recommendation. Take us through that nuance.
I think one of the things we've done since the founding of the company was this idea that no matter how much you instrument something, for example, with a dashboard, you're still going to get asked questions and have to iterate and work, right? You know, we've all been in the meeting where somebody says, you know, I'm looking at my dashboard, why are sales down in the Southwest? And everybody turns to some analyst who now has to go figure this out. And what that person does is they tend to go pull a bunch of data together. And they used to do that in spreadsheets on their desktop, and that was pretty inefficient. Now they do it in Alteryx, and that might be pulling some data out of the cloud data warehouse. It might be pulling in third-party data, like maybe the industry's down in that region, right? You pull all that together. And then that person has a choice to make. Sometimes it's just an answer. Oh yeah, well, you know, sales are down for every company in that region, secular trend, let's move on. Or it might be, I need to automate this. I'm gonna have to build a report on this every single week, and so they can go do that. I think what we're gonna see now is a bunch of new requests coming in. We're rolling out AI, we're doing these things. We're all gonna turn to that same analyst and say, go figure out how the AI thing is gonna know how to do this for a very long time. And that analyst is gonna have to figure out how to pull this data together, systematize it, turn it into a workflow, and build that out. And so I think that's a pretty natural evolution. I think one of the core theses we hold is that you're gonna be turning to somebody who knows your business to do that, not just somebody who's super technical. You're gonna have to marry those skills together, but you're gonna start asking people in your company to solve these new kinds of problems, and they're gonna need a set of tooling and capabilities to go solve it.
You know, what's interesting and fun is that the low code, no code revolution is coming into this area where at the point of analysis, you can just code.
Right.
And so the coders will go lower down the stack and work on harder workflows. So at the end of the day, workflows and data become the intellectual property for companies.
Right.
So the first step that we've been reporting on is they go, okay, what do we have? That's the first step. And then they go, okay, how do we use that data? And then you start to see kind of that behavior change. What's your perspective on this? Because I think enterprise analytics, the business that you're in, is now the beginning of that change.
Yeah, I think people are gonna find not only they need to get a catalog of what they have and how they're gonna use it, they're gonna have to figure out what they need. Because again, you're gonna want external data, right? You don't want this agent or whatever it is that only understands your little universe. It should have a purview of the wider world. And then you're gonna have to understand how it's being used. And I think the other thing is we're gonna have to know traceability. You know, one of the things I think AI is so good at is creative tasks. Right? You can give it all this marketing collateral, tell it come up with something really fun and interesting, and you go, wow, that's really fun and interesting. When I ask an analytical question about my business, how are sales in the Southwest region, what I'm not looking for is something fun and interesting that the AI sort of made up on the fly. What I want is the actual answer. And so we're gonna have to complement the creativity of AI with the predictability and the precision that people want out of their analytic systems. And so that is not only preparing the team to put that together, but it's the traceability. People are gonna go, where did that number come from? And we can't just go, I don't know, the robots made it up. We have to say, no, actually, here's the traceability. And we might say, actually, that's not how we want it to do that. We want it to change. And we're going to swivel right back to that same person again and go, can you make it do that thing differently so we get this actual number?
Yeah.
And so I think that's important, but it's not just the data you have.
Yeah.
It's also the data that you're going to need.
Yeah.
And I think people are going to have to really think about how they bring all that together in a way that is trusted and makes sense.
You know, Andy, I think one point that I can share that's kind of validates that is that no one wants to use a generic foundation model to drive their business. They'll use it to complement data.
Right.
That's to your point. The other thing that we get a lot on theCUBE over the past year is the following kind of directive we hear from commentating, which is enterprises say at the top level, CEO or board, let's use AI to transform our business. And that then gets translated to what workflows do we attack it and then be more efficient or drive revenue.
Right.
That's the high level. And then they go, great, solve that problem, take that hill. And then it gets down to into the platform. Okay, so how do we do that? That's kind of where we're at right now. How would you talk about that? Because you guys have an interesting narrative around you, the canvas to solve AI problems.
Right.
Because this is kind of what I see the need right now. What is that canvas? Because that's the point we're seeing. Okay, the directive has been made. We see clear line of sight of how AI could help the muck, the toil, the undifferentiated heavy lifting, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
But now I got to put it to action. What do I do next? What is this canvas? Explain.
Yeah. I'll tell you my direct experience doing it. At my last company, one of the things that we did was we rolled out a large language model wall to wall. Every employee, we went on site with the vendor that provided that large language model. We did a big hackathon. We came up with all these interesting ideas. It was really fun. We came up with 60 custom GPTs that we built, that we rolled out around the company, and they were really helpful. What we found was we could do that again in areas that were creative. Where it all fell down and where we couldn't drive as much value was anywhere that we needed to use our actual business systems or the data under those systems. And what we found was we had two choices. We could go in the front door of those APIs. So imagine I'm writing a GPT that I want to pull together everything I know about a customer before I go meet with them. Well, you can think of how many systems know something about the customer, my billing system, my CRM system, my marketing system, my loyalty system, my custom product database, right? You start pulling all that together and you go, well, all I have to do is make 12 API calls to pull this data together. And you're back to like, I'm basically building a dashboard, right?
Yeah.
This is not that interesting. Or I have to go to the underlying data and use a tool like Alteryx to pull all this together and say, here's everything that I know about a customer at the data layer, and I'm gonna have the GPT iterate on that. And so what we discovered was, going in the front door was a hard coding problem.
Yeah.
We didn't have a tool like Alteryx rolled out yet where we could get to all the data assets. And I identified that as the biggest need. I said, I'm going to continue to transform the company with a large language model. I need a tool, a canvas, where a business person can pull data together to solve a problem with AI. And so when I got the opportunity to come to Alteryx, it was like, well, this is the exact problem I had before. I've seen this problem. I've had this need. And that need is exactly as you described. It's a canvas or a workspace where somebody who understands the business can say, I need this bit of data, I need this bit of data, and understands the actual data. They can say, oh, I know that my CRM system has 7 ways we calculate this one thing for different reasons. I need this one for this problem. And I think that's the big unlock. I think that's where people will start using AI to solve business problems, when they can bring not only the creativity, but the actual data of the business to bear on the problem.
You know, I think that's a great point. I was talking to a founder of a company that sold it to another company, and the reason why he sold the company was, or was attracted to sell the company is that he was trying to solve such a hard problem. His job was so hard that this company solved his problem so fast.
Yes.
He's like, I need to kind of just join forces. Your point about this brute force attack, I can program the APIs, again, a lot of grunt work, a lot of pounding coding. But what do you get? Is it repeatable? Is it a black box?
Right.
So there's some technical things. We can do it internally. So there's a lot of that conversation going on around, hey, I can brute force it this way, or build like an abstraction, have an Alteryx canvas that doesn't have to change the underlying conditions. I mean, that's what you're kind of getting at, right?
Yeah, and I think it also goes to the cost basis of AI. And there's a big debate going on right now, and I'm not here to take sides on it. Is it the value of these business applications going to make AI great, or does AI kind of compress the value of these business applications and become that logic layer, right? I think we've seen some pretty big name CEOs sort of debating this in the press. I don't know that answer, but I was pretty sure for the use cases that I was familiar with, paying to use all those APIs when I didn't want any of that business logic. I just wanted the data, and it was my data, right? It's my own data. I'm not looking for training data. Like, this was my company's data. Made sense to go right to the data. I'm sure there are other use cases where using that logic might have made sense, right? That logic might exist for a reason. But I think we're going to more and more see organizations saying, I have all this data. It is my data, even though it's in these business systems. I want access to that data so I can use it to make my AI system smarter. And that might even be buying an AI, agent from one of those big vendors, but it might need to know about these other systems, right? I want my AI agent to be
it's
smart.
situational. You could argue that the logic makes sense if you need the logic, if that's the data you want.
Right.
But those systems weren't built during the Gen AI era, so they had a reason why they have the logic.
Right.
Now, the trend I'd like to get your reaction on, see if this fits into the canvas, is that the big winners that I'm seeing right now in the market are the ones that look at abstractions as an opportunity to kind of pull the silos out without breaking them down. In other words, you have two choices: break down the silos, or re-architect everything, which is a heavy lift, or just use the data in there, and then for the best of breed use cases of why they exist, you still use the logic. I'm saying it's the abstraction of the complexity.
Yeah, and I think, look, you still have a workforce that uses those business applications, and they're not going anywhere. So I'm not saying these applications go away. I'm simply saying you might have use cases where, if I'm writing something that spans multiples of these, going in the front door, having all that logic run, paying for that compute, that API call, whatever that is, might not make the most sense. For some use cases, you might want to go direct your data. And in a lot of use cases, you might even have to tell that system going in the front door which piece of the data am I trying to even get to? And so again, I think there's almost a role that emerges, maybe a few roles, of people whose job it is to sort of sit in the middle of these orchestrations and think about, how does this all come together, and what tools do I need to do this, and then iterate. The other thing I think that's not going to happen is people are going to roll out their AI agent, push the go button, and go, boy, that we're done. I think they're going to iterate, right? They're going to learn how they want this to work. And so when we learn things in companies, we turn to the people running those things and say, hey, can you make this work a little differently? And so I think that's a big part of this too.
You guys have a lot of announcements on the product side. Clearly, product-led growth is on your horizon, so I see that as a big thing. What is the value that you see if someone asks you, hey, Andy, what is the key value of Alteryx right now? Is it that canvas? Is it the abstraction? What's the main value proposition that you're offering customers? Because you have a lot of experience coming in with analytics and dashboarding and the analyst side. They will be driving the change. The business transformation is the business people.
Yeah, I think what Alteryx really does at its core is help business analysts become sort of superheroes and super users of data, or data knowledge workers. You're looking for a place, and again, it used to be your desktop and Excel, and now the data sets are so large and you're trying to move so fast that's not really tenable anymore. What you need, if you're this kind of, think RevOps, marketing ops, we all have these great, really incredible people that do operations for a living. They need a workspace, a canvas, where they can say, I need to grab this bit of data and this bit of data and some external data, and I know how to pull it together and do something smart with it and come up with a conclusion. That's really what we help our customers do.
Over the past 20 years, I've been chronicalizing all these transformations. I have to date myself, but I will. Go back 20 years, was IT transformation, consumerization of IT, which was make the IT department easier.
Right.
Okay, then it became digital transformation, which is, okay, that's the company-wide. I think the AI one that's coming out of this, and this is generally validated by the experts we interview, is that it's business transformation. Now, if you believe that to be true, which I think that's generic thing of people, transforming the business, that's absolutely key. But when you get into AI, you're seeing people throw AI at the enterprise, and AI in the enterprise is one of the hottest categories right now because it's only like 1% of the spend has even been realized yet. So huge TAM.
Right.
It's not, you can't just throw AI at the enterprise because there's a lot of knobs and buttons in the enterprise that you got all kinds of domain specific kind of configurations, you got architectures. So search was hard to crack the code on in enterprise. You're seeing companies with RAG dominate that area. Analytics, again, hard problems around, okay, it's easy to say dashboard, but you got to go get the databases. So it's like so nuanced in the enterprise. Explain how hard it is and why AI is going to be such transformation, because your canvas essentially makes that problem go away. That's the way I see it. What's your take?
That's exactly right. It's a hard challenge because most of us have our first experiences with AI in the consumer space. and there's not a whole permissioning problem set in the consumer space, right? You don't have some people get to see some parts of Wikipedia, not some of the rest, right?
Yeah.
But that's how businesses run. And I give you a simple example.
Yeah.
You know, when I've rolled this out in the past, one of the conversations we had was we have an incredible amount of information in our messaging platform, you know, in our Slack system for people to communicate. We should connect it to that. Well, that sounds really good until somebody says, well, let's ask the GPT now, what do people think of this leader that we have in the organization? And everybody's private chats are part of that knowledge base. Like, that's not what we do. That's not, and that's not the expectation of that system, right? We expect to have some privacy. The same is true if you're in a public company. You wouldn't want everybody in the company to be able to put together a predictive model of the company's next earnings statement inside the company because they have access to all this data. So the reality is enterprises have a governance model and an expectation of that governance model and security systems and things that are going to have to be inherent in these solutions. And so one, you're going to have an ability to replicate those systems and how these tools work. And then the second, as we were talking about earlier, is we built a whole set of systems that run the business that have a set of inherent knowledge in those systems that now have to transpose themselves into this new AI universe. And that's either going to be having the AI use each one of these systems, might be the answer, or you're going to have to take some of the logic around all that data and make it clear to these AI systems. And so, you know, to your point, I think the idea that that is clearly a problem. And when organizations have a problem, they turn to their partners and their vendors and they say, who can help me put together a way to solve this problem? Our goal is to show up for our customers and say, this is really a preparedness problem. And we've literally called our space data prep for the last 20 years. You now have a preparedness problem. You need to prepare your data for something. We've been doing that a long time, if not through the lens of AI, through the lens of how an enterprise does it.
You know, it's interesting. I mean, again, this is such a great conversation because one, that back end preparation was needed for many generations. We've seen that data dashboard business, but they mentioned about the Slack and the user experience. They don't care.
Right.
They just want hyper personalization.
Right.
Now, to make all that work behind the scenes about privacy, I don't want this data to be exposed to salespeople, finance, you know, all kinds of knobs and buttons. This is where the value comes in. This is a hard problem. Scope the opportunity for the enterprise, because I think this is the nirvana. Everyone wants to get there.
Yeah.
Hey Siri, hey Cube, hey company chatbot, get me my thing, do my. So they want the interface.
Yes.
They want the personalization.
Yep.
They just don't want to know.
I think the whole
the back end, the architecture.
Yeah, they don't want the complexity, right? I think AI is in some ways, if we do it right, the great simplifier. And that's not only for users, but for customers too, right? We've all had to deal with companies where you say, boy, why is it so hard for me to just get an answer from this company I'm dealing with? What I want is the simplicity. Let me ask the system and let it tell me what's going on. The same is true inside the company, right? We're all trying to get something done. You know, I joke, companies are always trying to find this mix of, you know, enough process that it doesn't feel like it's the Legend of Zelda every time you're trying to do something. But I also don't want so much process that it feels like I'm going to the DMV just to try to get, you know, an order form through. The nice part about AI, I think, is you can take a lot of that complexity of process and maybe make it so simple that somebody just goes, I just asked this thing and it knows how to navigate the internal workings of the system. Somebody has to help put that simplicity in place over all that complexity. And again, I think that's where there's a few places where I think there's sort of a picks and shovel strategy. I talk about our product being one. I think enterprise workflow is another. And I think collaboration is another. If you really think about these horizontal systems that companies have rolled out, I think there's a new set of demands coming to these vendors to say, okay, you know, in an AI universe, make my data make sense, make my workflows make sense, make my collaboration make sense. But I completely agree with your point. I don't want a new set of complexity when I do that. I want a simplification.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned, you know, the future of work. I think that's one big one that's going to be changed, because automation is coming in here clearly with personalization. And also the role of the analyst becomes a transformative figure.
Yes.
Because you call them superheroes. I think that's going to be a big trend. The thing you mentioned about your experience with LLMs and the hackathons is a good one, because I think you're looking at it and you're realizing, hey, there's a lot of different models. So you have a lot of model integration. You know, and in generative AI, it's generative. It's not like it's pre-programmed. So you have to do data prep in almost runtime. Not to get complicated in the weeds here, but like the concept of a system being ready at any time for any query is hard.
Yeah, and that's right. And these systems, when you build these custom things, you can give it specific instructions. I went through this when I built my first GPT. It was a tool to help me prepare for reaching out to a customer. And I took a bunch of use cases that we had and examples of value we provided customers. and I load this thing in, but I didn't train it correctly, and it just started making stuff up. It was really fascinating. I'd write these emails about these incredible savings that we had built for customers, and I was like, wow, that's almost unbelievable. And the answer was, it wasn't believable. And when I dug in, I was like, well, here's why. But importantly, I was then able to go in and retrain the system to say, hey, when I prompt for this kind of stuff, I want you to go specifically to this set of data, and I want you to only use this data. And so again, to me, that's kind of an analyst job. I could go in there, you could imagine at scale, and say, hey, when our customers ask a question about billing, I want you to only go to this little simple table I've created, and I only want you to get this billing information and provide it to a customer. Don't make up an answer to their billing question, and then we'll iterate. So I think you're right. Like, can we make not only it simple, but make it predictable?
Trust is critical. The data, you mentioned the traceability comes into trust.
That's right.
It's funny, when ChatGPT came out, they thought I was the founder of the All In podcast. I'm like, close enough, but I mean, because I worked with some of those guys in other opportunities, so it's like, it got it wrong, but it sounded great, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, wow, okay. But that's your point. Like, there's a lot of false positives, and enterprises won't tolerate that. I mean, the bar is high.
Right. No, I think that's right. I think, we're going to start to see examples over the next couple of I want to say years, but it might be months, of people who get it right. We're going to see some, I think, amazing experiences where we'll start to go, wow, look at how this company is doing this. What an incredible customer experience. And I think we're also going to start to see the opposite, where we say, look at what this company did. They rolled this thing out, and they didn't have that traceability, and the unpredictable happened. And how do companies react to that? I think it's going to be really interesting. I think that will then come full circle to, again, a whole set of processes and capabilities that companies are going to say they need to have if they're going to be successful.
Well, we're going to do an agentic AI summit here, 2-day event. Definitely want to have you guys in there for sure, because this is top of mind. It's pretty clear, and even Andy Jassy at AWS reInvent mentioned it. Google Cloud folks have mentioned it as well, that agentic's coming. It's just not today. The AI infrastructure is the key. That's just the speeds and feeds. You're seeing all the semiconductor companies doing well, and the data layer that you're in the build out mode now. So you're in a good spot. As CEO, new at the helm, holding the wheel of the ship, what's your investment strategy? What are you focused on? What are your growth areas? Obviously product-led growth must be, you got the Copilot, you got to deal with Google Cloud, you're in their marketplace. What's your focus? What's your investment thesis this year? What are you investing in?
Yeah, the biggest area we're investing in is one, connectivity into cloud data warehouses continues to be a big driver of our business as people want to get more value out of the investments they've made in that infrastructure. And then the second one is exactly in line with our discussion here, which is our product as it exists today is the product that solves this problem. So this is not a future state we have to get to. People use our product to do data prep. This is the new data prep. I think what happens when you go after new use cases, though, is you discover new features people want, new things that they need. And so I expect us to have a very fast-moving roadmap around, as people use our data prep product to get their data prepared for AI. We'll be working closely with our customers to sort of make sure that all those things we learn end up showing up in the product.
Yeah, I mean, generative is just kind of prepping data at runtime. And then resilience, final question on resilience, this comes up a lot. The bar is high on resilience. I mean, some say generative AI is just another app. So you have experience in that. What's your thoughts on resilience? Customers have a high bar on integrating their apps. How do you guys look at resilience?
I mean, I think as we think about having whether it's an agentic workforce or again, sort of a large language model based infrastructure, those things can't go down. They need to be, again, predictable and there in steady state. And so a lot of what we're working on is how to make sure that the system's always ready for people to go, that we're fast. Again, people are going to want to bring in very large volumes of data quite quickly and be adaptable. And that, again, we're adaptable. I think part of being on the forefront of something new and exciting is acknowledging that we don't know all the ways people are going to use this. We don't know the way it's going to be, again, as I said earlier, positive and even negative. How do we make sure that our customers and our users are ready to move quickly and adapt as we learn? And I think that's going to be a really important thing that happens.
It must be fun for you to go into customers. Certainly you've been hacking LLMs and doing your stuff on your own too, prior to joining Alteryx. Must be fun going to see customers and seeing their problems. What's the coolest thing you've seen? Or when I say coolest thing, like coolest challenge, opportunity that you've seen in the customer base you've been poking at?
Yeah, I think it's exactly right. It's fascinating how much right now in these meetings is people spinning their laptops around saying, like, look at this thing that I built, and then seeing something else that somebody else built. It is really interesting how people are thinking about their business. I talked to a customer in Europe recently, and they were talking about how while they're a manufacturing company, a lot of their cost basis is the design time. They're a bespoke large-scale manufacturer. And so they spend a lot of time getting the designs right. And they said one of the things that they believe AI can help them do is learn from all their previous designs, do a lot of pattern matching really quickly, and come up with, think of it almost like an 80-20 of a starting point of a design. And that would compress every aspect of their business down to faster turnarounds, faster time to money, better customer experience. Really fascinating. And I just think, again, every business is thinking about how do I completely change. That would change everything from their margin structure, their delivery timelines, their staffing levels, and what they're hiring. I mean, just fascinating transformational concept. And they were showing me like we can already do a lot of this today. It's really cool.
There's no bubble when there's value extraction and value creation with technology. Andy, final question for the folks watching that are either Alteryx customers and prospects. What's the pitch? What's the narrative that you want to share? Why Alteryx? When should they call you in? Is there certain signals and things in their environment that jump out off the page to them and say, hey, we got to call Andy?
Yeah, I think that's a great, thank you for the question. There's a couple of things that I think we see. One is, again, these big investments in cloud data warehouse, we tend to follow up very quickly. People say, we put all our data somewhere. How do we give people access to it in a way that can solve problems? So that would be one. The second is, as your company starts to go down this AI path, and I think everybody will quickly realize you have a data challenge to sort of sort out. We're happy to come partner in that area. And then the last one is to our existing customers. One of the things that's so exciting right now is we have this massive community of users. We have 600,000 users in our community. We have these ACE experts, people who are Alteryx certified experts. And what I think is exciting for them is I think the future of AI means that their skill set is going to be even more valuable as companies try to get their data prepared for AI. And so a lot of what we're doing is partnering not only with our customers, but even our users to help them get ready for this and really feel like this is a tailwind for their career.
Yeah, congratulations too on the new job. We've been covering the events. Definitely your community has got a lot of engagement. It's a trust network.
Yeah.
It's very cool. Thanks for coming on theCUBE, appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, it's really fun.
Andy's here at the helm at Alteryx. Again, perfect position if you're in the enterprise, you want to connect and get that data out, get that value in this new generative world where things are being generated. You got to have that data ready and prepared. You need a canvas. Alteryx has a great solution, check it out. I'm John Furrier here at theCUBE in Palo Alto. Thanks for watching.